Three people, one family tree, and one word that just set the entire internet on fire: colorism. In the span of just a few days, Blueface kicked a dark-skinned woman out of a car on the side of a highway in the middle of the night on a live stream, in front of thousands of people watching it happen in real time. His mother, Karlissa, then jumped online to defend it, in writing, with her chest all the way out. And right on cue, Chrisean Rock got on her own live stream and suggested that if you were born dark-skinned, you were basically born to struggle, like hardship is some kind of divine assignment handed out based on your complexion. 3 separate moments. 3 separate platforms. One ugly thread tying all of it together. And by the end of this video, you're going to see exactly how these incidents stack on top of each other. Why the timing of Chrisean Rock's comments has people questioning whether any of this was a coincidence, and the one question that nobody in that entire circle seems willing to answer out loud. So go ahead and lock in, because we are walking through all of it. The live stream, the compliment that wasn't a compliment, the argument, the highway, the mother's defense, and the fallout that is still unfolding right now. Now before we get into it, let me be clear about what this video is. Everything we're discussing today played out publicly, on live streams, in viral clips, and in social media posts that these individuals put out themselves. I'm going to show you what was said, what was done, and what the internet's response has been, and then I'm going to give you my honest read on all of it. You can agree with me, you can disagree with me. That's what the comment section is for, and trust me, I'm going to be asking you some direct questions before this video is over. So if you're new here, hit that subscribe button now, because this is the kind of story that is going to have updates, and you're going to want to be here when they drop. Now, to really understand why this week exploded the way it did, we have to start where the fire actually started, and that's with Blueface. Because what happened on his live stream wasn't just a random moment of disrespect. It was a full sequence of events, captured on camera, that escalated in a way that had people replaying the clip with their jaws on the floor. And here's the thing. The way it started is almost more revealing than the way it ended. So let's set the scene. Blueface was hosting a live broadcast. There's music playing, there's people in the car, the energy is loose. It's the kind of stream he's done 100 times. And at one point, he turns his attention to a dark-skinned woman who is there with the group. And he tells her, "I love your skin." Then he follows it up by telling his viewers, and I want you to hear the phrasing very carefully, because the phrasing is the entire story. This is a good dark skin right there. He says it more than once. He repeats it to the people around him, almost like he's pointing out a feature on a car he's thinking about buying. A good dark skin. Now, on the surface, somebody watching that clip on mute might think, okay, he gave her a compliment. What's the problem? But if you grew up in the black community, you already know exactly what the problem is, and you didn't need anybody to explain it to you. Because the moment you attach the word good to a complexion, what you are communicating, whether you mean to or not, is that there is a baseline, and that baseline is bad. You are saying that most dark skin doesn't make the cut, but hers, congratulations, hers is one of the acceptable ones. It's the same family of comment as, "You're pretty for a dark-skinned girl." And that phrase has been called out as a backhanded microaggression for decades. This isn't new. This isn't complicated. And this isn't something Blueface plausibly never heard before. And here's the detail that tells you the woman in the car understood the assignment immediately. She didn't smile. She didn't say thank you. She clocked it. Right there, on his stream, in front of his audience, she pushed back. And that moment right there, is where this story turns from a slick comment into something much darker, because Blueface did not respond like a man who just got checked on a clumsy choice of words. He responded like a man whose ego got touched in front of his viewers. And what he did next is the part of this story that has people the angriest. And we're going to get into every bit of it. But first, you need to understand the argument that broke out in that car, because the things that were said in those next few minutes tell you everything about how deep this goes. So the woman pushes back, and instead of Blueface pausing for even 1 second to hear what she's saying, the whole energy in the car flips. And this is where we have to slow down and really walk through what happened, because the escalation didn't come out of nowhere. It came in steps, and every step was a choice. First, instead of engaging with her point, Blueface goes straight for the insult. He tells her, and this was captured on the stream for the world to hear, that she's so dark, she's dumb. Read that again. He didn't say her argument was dumb. He didn't say she was being dramatic. He tied her intelligence directly to her complexion. In one sentence, he confirmed the very thing she had just accused him of. She said, that comment was colorist. And his response was essentially to prove her right, on camera, in high definition. You cannot make this up. And then the conversation somehow gets worse, because it turns into this bizarre semantic standoff about the definition of the word colorist. The woman lays out what colorism means: discrimination based on the shade of someone's skin, something that has historically cut hardest against dark-skinned women in the Black community. And Blueface demands that she look it up, right there, on the spot. So they search it. And the first definition that pops up is about a colorist being a professional who works with color, like a hair colorist. And he pounces on that like it's some kind of checkmate moment. He starts mocking her, telling her she sounds dumb, telling her she's been lied to her whole life, while she keeps trying to tell him to read more, to keep scrolling, to look at the actual context. It was honestly hard to watch, because everybody in that car, everybody watching that stream, and everybody who has seen that clip since knows exactly which definition was relevant to the conversation. Playing dumb about a word is not a defense. It's a deflection, and it tells you he wasn't confused. He was cornered. Now, during this same exchange, something else jumps out that people haven't talked about enough. Another woman in the car, a brown-skinned woman, tries to stand up for the dark-skinned woman and call the comment what it is. And Blueface turns on her immediately and basically dismisses her from the conversation entirely. Your skin isn't dark enough. Why are you even speaking for dark-skinned people? Think about that logic for a second. According to that rule, you are only allowed to object to an insult if the insult was aimed at your exact shade. That's not a principle. That's a divide-and-conquer move. That's telling every other Black woman in that car, this isn't your fight. Sit down, stay in your lane. And it's exactly how colorism survives, by convincing people that unless it's happening to them personally, it's not happening at all. And then the argument reaches its ugly peak. Blueface orders the driver to pull over. It's the middle of the night, and he makes the woman and her friend, whose supposed crime was defending her, get out of the vehicle. On the side of a highway, at around 4 in the morning, he berates them the entire time, calling them stupid, mocking them as they get out, telling them they serve no purpose. All of it on his live stream. All of it in front of an audience. Let me take the commentary hat off for 1 second and speak plainly. Whatever you think about that argument, whatever side you land on about whether the initial comment was innocent or loaded, there is no version of events where putting 2 women out of a car on the side of a highway in the dead of night is okay. That is not a debate about semantics. That is a decision about somebody's physical safety. A stranger's livestream audience watched a man punish 2 women for disagreeing with him by stranding them in the dark. And the reason this moment hit so many people so hard is because of the through line. The entire conflict started over her complexion. Her skin was the topic when he called her over. Her skin was the topic when he complimented her. Her skin was the topic when he insulted her intelligence. And her skin was the reason she objected in the first place. Remove that element, and this exact sequence of events never happens. That's not an accusation. That's just reading the tape in order. Now, if the story ended there, this would already be one of the most talked about live stream moments of the year. But it didn't end there. Because the internet had one very natural question after that clip went viral. Where's the accountability? Who in this man's life is going to look at that footage and say, son, you were wrong? And that is exactly where this story takes its next turn. Because somebody in Blueface family did respond publicly. His own mother. And what Karlissa had to say wasn't an apology. It wasn't accountability. It was something else entirely. And when you hear it, you're going to understand why people are saying the problem in this family didn't start with that CAR.SO. The clip of Blueface kicking those women out of the car starts circulating everywhere. And the backlash builds the way it always builds. The reposts, the reaction videos, the think pieces, the comment sections turning into courtrooms. And right in the middle of that firestorm, Karlissa Saffold Harvey, Blueface's mother, decides to log on and add her voice to the conversation. Now remember, this is the moment where a parent had a real choice. She could have said nothing. She could have said, my son made a mistake and he needs to do better. She could have even just quietly called him off camera like most parents would. Instead, Karlissa typed out a public defense, and I want to walk through it piece by piece, because every sentence of it reveals something. Her comment, in essence, was this. He said, "I love your skin. It's not his fault she don't. Y'all just don't like my son." And then she added the part that really set people off, that if Blueface had told a light-skinned woman she was a fine red bone, that woman would have happily taken the compliment. Let's start with the first half, because it's doing a lot of quiet work. It's not his fault she don't love her skin. In one sentence, Karlissa takes the woman who got stranded on a highway at 4 in the morning and reframes her as the actual problem. Not the man who put her there, not the insult about her intelligence, none of that. No, in this telling, the woman's real issue is her own insecurity. She's the one who doesn't love herself, and that's why she heard the compliment wrong. Now, I'm going to be blunt. There is no evidence anywhere in this story that this woman doesn't love her skin. What the footage actually shows is a woman who loved herself enough to object to a backhanded comment to a famous man's face, on his platform, in front of his audience. That is the opposite of insecurity. That is self-respect with the volume turned up. But the insecurity narrative is a very convenient one, because if the woman is insecure, then Blueface is innocent. The insults never mattered, and nobody has to change anything. It's not a defense. It's a magic trick. And then there's the second half of what Karlissa said, which honestly might be worse, because it's where she says the quiet part out loud. Her argument is that a light-skinned woman would have been thrilled to be called a fine red bone. Now set aside the comparison for a second and notice what that claim concedes. It concedes that skin tone is a ranking system. It concedes that in her son's world, and apparently in hers, women are sorted by complexion, and the ones at the top of the sorting are expected to be grateful for their placement. She didn't reject the colorism framework. She endorsed it, and then used it as her closing argument. She basically told the internet, "Your problem isn't that my son ranks women by skin tone. Your problem is that dark-skinned women refuse to accept their ranking with a smile." And people heard it exactly that way, because that's what it says. Here's what makes all of this so heavy. Karlissa is a dark-skinned black woman herself. And that detail is not a gotcha. It's actually the saddest part of the entire story, because it shows how deep this conditioning runs. Colorism doesn't survive because a few bad actors at the top keep it alive. It survives because it gets handed down, mother to son, generation to generation, until the people enforcing it are the same people it was built to wound. A mother looked at footage of her grown son insulting a dark-skinned woman's intelligence and stranding her on the side of a road, and her instinct, her very first instinct, was to defend the ranking system instead of the woman who got ranked. If you want to understand why the internet used the word generational all week, that right there is why. And yet, as wild as Karlissa's defense was, it still isn't the moment that turned this week into a full-blown cultural reckoning. Because before we even get to what Chrisean Rock said on her livestream, you need to see the machine that produced all of this. None of it happened in a vacuum. And once you see the pattern underneath it, you will never watch a clip from this circle the same way again. Now, before we get to Chrisean Rock's livestream, we need to talk about something that makes this whole week make sense. Because if you watch this story and thought, where does behavior like this even come from? The honest answer is, it comes from years of practice. And it comes from an audience model that has never once punished it. Let's look at the pattern. This is not the first time Blueface has been at the center of a controversy involving how he treats women on camera. His entire public brand, going back years, through the reality shows, the viral moments, the relationship drama that has played out in front of millions, has been built on a very specific formula. Chaos, confrontation, and humiliation as entertainment. That's not my characterization of him. That's just the content catalog, and it's a catalog that has been monetized at every single step. The streams get clipped. The clips get reposted. The outrage gets engagement. The engagement gets paid. And here's the uncomfortable part. When you look at who is watching, who is commenting, who is keeping those numbers high, you find a fan base that skews heavily toward young black women. Dark-skinned black women. The same demographic that was on the receiving end of this week's insults is the demographic that has been underwriting the entire operation. And that dynamic, where the audience funds the very behavior that degrades them, is why moments like this keep happening. There has never been a financial consequence severe enough to force a change. Every previous controversy ended the same way. A few days of backlash, a wave of free publicity, and then back to business with an even bigger platform than before. When bad behavior is a growth strategy, You don't get better behavior. You get escalation. And a woman standing on the side of a highway at 4 in the morning is what escalation looks like. That's also why the "it's just entertainment" defense falls apart this time. For years, the chaos around Blueface and Chrisean Rock has been sold as spectacle. Messy, sure, but harmless theater between consenting adults who know the cameras are rolling. But the woman in that car wasn't a cast member. She wasn't in on a bit. She was a regular person who found herself inside somebody else's content machine, who objected to being ranked by her skin tone, and who paid for that objection by being stranded in the dark while an audience watched. There is no version of "it's just entertainment" that covers that. Entertainment has a cast list. She wasn't on it. And we should also be honest about why the "good dark skin" comment detonated the way it did, because outsiders to this conversation sometimes genuinely don't understand it. Colorism isn't just about individual rude comments. It's a system with a long, documented history, from paper bag tests at social clubs to decades of casting decisions that pushed darker-skinned black women out of frame, to the language people absorbed at kitchen tables before they were old enough to spell the word complexion. That history is why certain phrases carry voltage. Good hair. Pretty for a dark-skinned girl. A good dark skin. Every one of those phrases smuggles in the same premise, that the default version of a dark-skinned woman is something less, and any exception should be grateful for the upgrade. That is why the woman in the car didn't smile and say thank you. She heard the entire history inside those 4 words, because she was supposed to. And her refusal to accept the premise, on camera, in front of a hostile audience, is exactly why this clip didn't fade in a day like the others did. She didn't just get insulted. She pushed back, clearly and calmly, and the punishment for that pushback is what turned a bad moment into a cultural flashpoint. So when Karlissa logged on to defend her son, she wasn't stepping into a neutral conversation. She was stepping into a week where the entire internet was already asking one question. Does this circle have a problem with dark-skinned women? And instead of answering no, she essentially answered, it's not a problem, it's a preference, and the women at the bottom of the preference should learn to live with it. Which brings us, with terrible timing, to Chrisean Rock. Chrisean Rock gets on her live stream and starts talking about being grounded in faith. And in the middle of that thought, she says this, and I'm paraphrasing her words closely because the wording is everything. When you're really grounded in Christ, everything that's meant for you is meant for you. So if you were born dark-skinned, you were born to go through what you were supposed to go through. Now, I need to be careful and fair here, so let's do this properly. Is there a charitable reading of that statement? Sure, there's a reading where Chrisean Rock was trying to say something like, everyone has their own path, and whatever life you were born into is the life you were meant to navigate. That's a common sentiment in a lot of faith traditions. People say versions of it every day. But here's the problem. That's not what she said. She didn't say everyone has a path. She specifically singled out dark skin as the example of a burden you're assigned at birth. Out of every human condition she could have picked, she picked complexion. And she picked it in the exact same week that the father of her child was trending for ranking a woman's complexion on a live stream and stranding her on a highway. Context is not a conspiracy theory. Context is just reading the calendar. And the internet read the calendar. The backlash against Chrisean Rock was immediate and enormous. And a lot of it came from a very specific group of people, dark-skinned black women. The same women who, in large numbers, have been the backbone of her fan base since the very beginning. And that is the part of this story that I keep coming back to, because it's the piece that ties all 3 of these people together. The audience being insulted here is not some abstract demographic. It is the core audience. These are the women who stream the music, boost the clips, defend the names in comment sections, and keep the whole machine profitable. And this week, that audience looked up and heard 3 connected people, a man, his mother, and his partner, each in their own way, treating dark skin as a ranking, a punchline, or a sentence. Let me say this part clearly, because it's where the commentary gets serious. What Chrisean Rock did on that live stream was take an idea as old as prejudice itself, that some people are simply born to suffer more, and dress it up in spiritual language. And that framing is dangerous precisely because it sounds gentle. It doesn't sound like an insult. It sounds like wisdom. But follow the logic all the way down and ask what it actually says to a dark-skinned girl watching that stream. Your struggle isn't caused by people treating you worse. It's just your assignment. God did it. So don't be angry at the world, and definitely don't be angry at people like us. That is not theology. That is an alibi. It takes responsibility off every person who ever made a dark-skinned woman's life harder and hands it to heaven instead. And whether she intended that or not, that's how it landed. And how something lands matters, especially when you have millions of followers. Now, is it possible that Chrisean Rock was responding to the backlash against Blueface with a defensive, spiritualized explanation for why dark-skinned people have it harder? Almost like she was building a philosophical excuse for the very behavior her partner was being dragged for? A lot of people think so, and honestly, the sequence of events makes it a fair question. She didn't name him. She didn't reference the clip. But she also didn't have to. When the whole internet is debating whether the people in your house have a problem with dark-skinned women, and your response is a sermon about dark-skinned people being born to struggle, people are going to connect those dots, and they did. And here's the question I promised you at the top of this video. The one question nobody in this circle seems willing to answer. It's not, was the comment colorist? It's not, was the sermon tone deaf? It's this, where's the apology? Not to the internet, to the woman. One woman got her complexion graded on a live stream, got her intelligence insulted in the same breath, and got put out of a car on a highway at 4 in the morning. And since that night, from Blueface, from Karlissa, from anyone in that circle, has there been a single word of accountability directed at her? Not that I've seen. What we've seen instead is a defense of the compliment, a defense of the sun, and a sermon that makes the whole thing sound like destiny. Everybody in this story has spoken, except to the one person who was owed the words. So let's talk about where this leaves us, because I don't want this video to just be outrage for outrage's sake. There's a reason this week hit a nerve that goes way beyond celebrity gossip. Colorism isn't a celebrity problem. It's a community problem, an old one. And what made this moment feel different is that it didn't happen behind closed doors. It happened on live streams, in writing, in public, with zero shame attached to it. And if there's one hopeful thing in this entire mess, it's the response. Because it wasn't that long ago that a comment like, "a good dark skin," would have slid by without a whisper. This week, it got called out in real time, by the woman in the car, by her friend who stood up when it wasn't even her fight, and by millions of people online who refused to let it be reframed as a compliment or a spiritual lesson. That's the part of this story worth holding on to. The standard is changing. The silence is over. And the people who built their platforms on the backs of dark-skinned women are finding out, in real time, that those women are done grading on a curve. Now I want to hear from you, and I really mean that. 3 questions for the comments. First, do you think good dark skin is a compliment people are overreacting to? Or is it exactly the backhanded framing that woman said it was? Second, should Karlissa have stayed out of it? Or does a mother have the right to defend her son even when he's clearly wrong? And third, do you believe Chrisean Rock's livestream was a response to the Blueface backlash? Or was the timing just a coincidence? Whatever you think, get in the comments, because I'm reading them, and the most interesting takes might end up in the next video. If this breakdown gave you something to think about, do me a favor, hit that like button, share this with somebody who needs to see the full picture, and subscribe if you haven't already, because this story is not over. There is a very good chance we hear more from Blueface, more from Karlissa, and more from Chrisean Rock before this is done. And when that happens, I'm going to be right here walking through all of it. And if you want the full context on how this circle got here in the first place, go check out my earlier breakdowns, because what happened this week didn't come out of nowhere. It came out of a pattern, and patterns don't break themselves. I'll see you in the next one.